Hi Jumpstart friends, my name is Alyssa and today I'm going to read a special story to you. The book is called Dear Juno. Our message prompt from Jumpstart says, today we will read about a boy who gets a photograph in a letter from his grandmother. The vocabulary words for this week are what I'm about to share. Our first vocabulary word is photograph, which is a picture made with a camera. So in this picture we see the camera and these are photographs which are printed out from the camera. And you might take pictures on a phone or a tablet, but a photograph is when they get printed out on their physical piece of paper. The next vocab word is soared, which means to fly high in the sky. So in this picture we see an eagle, and I see that he's really high up in the sky because you can see some clouds, and he's soaring, so he's flying high up in the sky. The next vocab word is proud, which means to feel happy and pleased because of something you have or have done. So in this picture, we see a girl and she's holding a trophy. So she's proud of herself. Maybe she got the trophy in sports or maybe a spelling bee, but she's proud and we see that she's smiling. Our next vocab word is thoughtful, which means to be serious and quiet because you are thinking. So in this picture, we see a little boy and he's being serious. His face looks serious and he's being quiet, probably because he's thinking. I wonder what he's thinking about. Our next vocab word is peeking, which means to take a quick look. So in this picture, we see a little girl, and I see her peeking through maybe a fence, and she's looking really quick. Our last vocab word is artist, which is a person who paints or draws pictures. So at the top of this vocab card, we see a little boy, and he's painting on a wall or maybe a mural, so he's an artist because he's painting or drawing pictures. And other words that we're going to hear throughout the story is address, and an address is where someone lives. It's the words and numbers written on a piece of mail. So you might see in the mail, you might get an envelope, and the words that are written on it are usually the person's address. And the second vocab word, another word that we're going to hear a lot throughout the story, is envelope. So on the cover of Dear Juno, we see the little boy, Juno, and he's holding an envelope. And this is what an envelope looks like. Now on the other side of the envelope, we're going to see an address, which is the words, which is the person's name and where they live. So now we're going to read the story. The story is called Dear Juno, and the author is Soyoung Pak, which means that she wrote the words. And the illustrator is Susan Kathleen Hartung, which means that she drew all the pictures in the story. So in this story, we're going to read about Juno, and he writes letters back and forth to his grandmother, and she lives far away in Korea. She's from Seoul, which is a town in Korea. So they write back and forth to each other, and this is his dog. I wonder what they write about. Let's read to find out. Juno watched as the red and white blinking lights soared across the night sky like shooting stars, and waited as they disappeared into faraway places. Juno wondered where they came from. He wondered where they were going, and he wondered if any of the planes came from a little town near Seoul, where his grandmother lived, and where she ate permisans every evening before bed. So in this picture, we can see Juno, and it's nighttime because we see the stars. And he's looking up at the stars, and he sees an airplane. And he wonders if it's going to the town where his grandmother lives, near Seoul in Korea. So the airplane reminds him of his grandmother. Juno looked at the letter that came that day. It was long and white and smudged. He saw the red and blue marks on the edges and knew the letter came from far away. His name and address were neatly printed on the front, so he knew the letter was for him. But best of all, the special stamp on the corner told Juno that the letter was from his grandmother. So in this picture, we see Juno, and he's looking at the envelope, which is the letter, and he can tell by the stamp in the corner that it came from his grandmother in Korea. I wonder what it says. Through the window, Juno could see his parents. He saw bubbles growing in the sink. He saw dirty dishes waiting to be washed. He knew he would have to wait for the cleaning to be done before his parents could read the letter to him. So he looks inside, and since he can't read, he needs his parents to read the letter from his grandma. But he sees that they're busy, so he knew that he would have to wait. So let's see what he decides to do. Maybe I can read the inside too, Juno said to his dog, Sam. Sam wagged his tail. Very carefully, Juno opened the envelope. Inside, he found a letter folded into a neat, small square. So here's Juno and his dog Sam, and he's opening up the letter himself to see if he can read it without his parents, because he knows it's going to take some time because they're doing the dishes. He unfolded it. Tucked inside were a picture and a dried flower. Juno looked at the letters and words he couldn't understand. He pulled out the photograph. It was a picture of his grandmother holding a cat. He pulled out the red and yellow flower. It felt light and gentle like a dried leaf. Juno smiled. "Come on, Sam, let's find Mom and Dad." So even though he couldn't read the words, he looked at the picture and he knew that it was his grandma and her cat. And he sees a dry flower, so he didn't need his parents to read about that. But now he needs to go see them to see what those words say. Let's see what happens next. "Grandma has a new cat," Juno said as he handed the letter to his mother, "and she's growing red and yellow flowers in her garden." "How do you know she has a new cat?" Juno's father asked. "She once sent me a picture of a strange cat," said Juno. "I guess not," said Juno's father. "How do you know the flowers from her garden?" asked Juno's mother. "She wouldn't send me a flower from someone else's garden," Juno answered. "No, she wouldn't," said Juno's mother. Then Juno's mother read him the letter. So even though he doesn't know what the word says, he has guesses as to what his grandma wrote about in the letter because he could see the flower and the picture, and he says that she wouldn't just send him some random person's picture of a cat or a flower from their garden. So he thinks it's the grandma's new cat and a flower from the grandma's garden. So here's what the letter said. "Dear Juno, how are you? I have a new cat to keep me company. I named him Juno after you. He can't help me weed, but the rabbits no longer come to eat my flowers. Grandma." "Just like you read it yourself," Juno's father said. "I did read it," said Juno. "Yes, you did," said his mother. So even though he couldn't read the words, he knew what it said because he could read the picture, because he saw the picture in the flower. So he was able to communicate, to see what his grandma was communicating, even though he couldn't read the words himself. At school, Juno showed his class his grandmother's picture and dried flower. His teacher even pinned the letter to the board. All day long, Juno kept peeking at the flower from his grandmother's garden. So peek means to take a quick look, just like we saw in this vocab card where the little girl's peeking through like the hole. He didn't have a garden that grew flowers, but he had a swinging tree. Juno looked at the letter pinned to the board. Did his grandmother like getting letters too? Yes, Juno thought. She likes getting letters just like I do. So Juno decided to write one. I wonder what he's going to say in his letter to his grandma. Let's keep reading to find out. After school, Juno ran to his backyard. He picked a leaf from the swinging tree, the biggest leaf he could find. Juno found his mother, who was sitting at her desk. He showed her the leaf. "I'm going to write a letter," he told her. "I'm sure it'll be a very nice letter," she answered. She gave him a big yellow envelope. "Yes, it will," Juno said. And then he began to draw. So he got an idea. He wants to send his grandma a letter just like she sent him one. So like she sent him a flower, he wants to send her a leaf from his swinging tree. I wonder what else he's going to say to her in his letter. First, he drew a picture of his mom and dad standing outside the house. Second, he drew a picture of Sam playing underneath his big swinging tree. Then very carefully, Juno drew a picture of himself standing under an airplane in a starry nighttime sky. After he was finished, he placed everything in the envelope. So since he can't write yet, or doesn't know how to spell words, he's going to send his grandma pictures to help her understand what he wants to say. So he drew a picture of his house, his mom and his dad. He drew a picture of his dog Sam and the swinging tree. And he's drawing a portrait of himself so she can see what he looks like. "Here's my letter," Juno announced proudly. "You can read it if you want." So remember we said that proud meant to feel happy and pleased because of something you have or have done. So Juno felt really proud that he wrote this letter for his grandma, and he did it all by himself. Juno's father looked in the envelope. He pulled out the leaf. "Only a big swinging tree could grow a leaf this big," he said. Juno's mother pulled out one of the drawings. "What a fine picture," she said. "It takes a good artist to say so much with a drawing." So remember, an artist is someone who draws or paints pictures. So Juno's an artist because he drew these pictures all by himself. Juno's father patted Juno on the head. "It's just like a real letter," he said. "It is a real letter," Juno said. "It certainly is," said his mother. Then they mailed the envelope and waited. So in this picture we see that the grandmother received Juno's letter. So we see the leaf from the swinging tree and the pictures she drew. And there's her cat sleeping on the envelope. I wonder if what she has to say to his letter. One day, a big envelope came. It was from Juno's grandmother. This time, Juno didn't wait at all. He opened the envelope right away. Inside, Juno found a box of colored pencils. He knew she wanted another letter. Next, he pulled out a picture of his grandmother. He noticed she was sitting with a cat and 2 kittens. He thought for a moment and laughed. Now his grandmother would have to find a new name for her cat in Korea. In Korea, Juno was a boy's name, not a girl's. Then he pulled out a small toy plane. Juno smiled. His grandmother was coming to visit. So Juno got some colored pencils from his grandma because she wants another picture and an airplane. So he thinks that she's coming to visit. And she also sent him a photograph of her cat, Juno, and 2 kittens. So her cat was actually a girl, not a boy. So Juno thinks that she has to find a new name for their cat because Juno's a boy's name, not a girl's name. Maybe she'll bring her cat when she comes to visit, Juno said to Sam as he climbed in bed. Maybe you two will be friends. Soon Juno was fast asleep, and when he dreamed that night, he dreamed about a faraway place, a village just outside Seoul, where his grandmother, whose gray hair sat on top of her head like a powdered donut, was sipping her morning tea. The cool air feels crisp against her cheek, crisp enough to crackle, he dreams, like the golden leaves which cover the Permison garden. So he's going to sleep and he's dreaming about where his grandmother's from. And here on the last page we see his grandma and her cat and the 2 kittens. And she's drinking her tea. The end. So that's all for today. Check back on Wednesday to see about the Let's Find Out About It video. Have a good week!